For those of us who live and breathe crypto, Bitwise is a name you want to know. They've been in the game since 2017 and now manage over 10 billion in crypto assets across 30 different solutions. Index funds, Bitcoin and crypto, equity ETFs, on-chain solutions, you name it, Bitwise does it. But here's what I really recommend checking out. Their weekly CIO memo. Every week, CIO Matt Hogan breaks down what's happening in crypto, like why Bitcoin's up or down, what the big institutions are doing, and the stories flying under the radar. It's sharp, it's free, and honestly, it's one of the best reads in crypto. Find it at bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. Again, bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. Hello again for another episode of REKT Vision. As is tradition, the market is dumping. Friday has definitely been a bad day for crypto markets this year. We have gmoney on again, who came on actually, I think, with Spencer last time. We had a bit of a macro week, and I know you have a background as on the trading side, the prop trading side, as well as talking about all the stuff that's been going on in NFTs and more broadly as well. But thanks for coming back on, gmoney. It's really great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Excited to have this convo. I feel like we always have great convos. So,
yeah, we were just talking about going to Asia over the next couple of weeks. There's quite a lot happening for conferences. There's one in Korea, and then there's one in Singapore right afterwards. But you did kind of jinx it and said we're just about to break out, and then the market started puking as you said it. Do you still think we're going to break out? Do you think we'll be broken out by the end of token?
I feel like I feel like we never do well around conferences because I feel like everybody that would be bidding is not in front of their computer screens. So we'll probably like have some sort of a pullback, but I feel like, the trade is more liquidity, price is higher, and like you just kind of have to stick to that and kind of try to ignore the noise as much as possible.
You know what? I've been saying the same thing for quite a while now on this show, particularly in the lead up to that to this week. And obviously, we've had this divergence from global liquidity or global M2, which has been a pretty good correlation for the last 3 or 4 years. I did think, though, I have to say that during the press conference, Powell was a little bit of like the data dependent style. And I do think that volatility is going to stay with us now for a little bit. I think we're going to have another couple of times where people are going to get shaken out, because my view on this now is that he's left it broadly so that if the jobs market now looks a little bit too weak, or if inflation comes a little bit above, there's like room for a change in policy, or maybe that he's not being quick enough. And I just feel like the market might freak out a little bit around that. Like the immediate reaction was that everyone piled into altcoins, and I was like, "Ooh, I think this could be a little bit more volatile from here." So I'm still bullish for Q4, but I'm even more defensive than I was before this, because I just feel as though there's going to be a bit more macro turbulence, let's say, rather than like going bad. It's just like one bag. Luckily, yesterday we had some better jobs data. I think jobless claims came out under than expected. But if that had been higher than expected, I was like, the market can really wobble here, I thought. I don't know what you think about that.
No, listen, I tend to agree with you. And so when I say long and strong and like going higher, I think it just like depends on timeframes, right? Like if you're sitting in spot and this isn't your full-time job to trade and figure out like every micro move of the market, then I think you just want to be there's no point in trying to be cute, right? Like I think ultimately the trend is higher. The dollar is going to get debased. Pretty much all currencies are going to get debased against hard assets. So you just want to be long and like not necessarily think about it. But I totally agree with you, Mando, in terms of like, of course, I think there's going to be increased volatility. If you're going to be trading, especially on leverage, you want to keep tight stops because there's going to be plenty of opportunity. And the last thing you want to do is blow up into one of these, right? Like that. I feel like that's always the mantra when you trade, right? Like just stay alive, like make sure you have enough to keep on trading and don't blow up, right? And I think we're probably going to have a lot of those types of situations, whether it's leveraged through altcoins or leveraged through perps or whatever. You just have to be like you have to know the game that you're playing, right? But if you're sitting there, maybe let's say in the majors with some like altcoin exposure, and like you have like a job and like you're doing something else, and your job isn't necessarily to watch every tick of the market, then it's like you want to be long. I don't it's like that quote that it's like your biggest risk is
Being invested.
yeah.
I agree with that. I just felt my first reaction that I saw on this timeline was, oh, we've got the quarter point rate cut. That's now behind us. We can now rally until year end. And my take from that was actually, and you saw open interest and perp trading. Everyone was going, oh, I'll go max long all these meme coins now. And everyone was pointing to like altcoins breaking out and we're about to enter an altcoin season. I was like, I think people are going to get hurt if they're going straight in for that sort of stuff. So I would be buying bad days like this. I think it could, like, this is only with a 1% move in Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And I think there's a lot of risk taking going on. I wanted to bring it back to the kind of the L1 trade, because I remember when you last came on, you had just been was it with the SharpLink guys on the Nasdaq,
Yeah.
and ETH was approaching all-time high then. I think it hit all-time high maybe just after you came on, and then ETH is kind of stuck around in this 4,500 range, pretty tight actually if you look at it. And then Solana kind of took up the mantle. We had a DAT trades kind of come in there, and I think Solana did hit an all-time high in market cap, or very close to an all-time high in market cap, but it's still a little bit off there in price. Any more thoughts around that? Like, I know you're a bit of, like you said, long and strong, but have you changed any of your positioning? You still think ETH's going to be the trade for the next couple of quarters, or do you think you got tempted by any of these other L1 trades, because it has moved down the risk curve? Like some of the other biggest movers for this week were like AVAX, Hyperliquid, Nia, like everyone who is either, I mean, Hyperliquid's a slightly different story, but anyone who is trying to do this DAT strategy is definitely gotten some love.
Yeah, I think one is I'm still long. I haven't repositioned anything. I think I participated in the Solana DAT, the Kyle Samani DAT for some size to take advantage on that. But like I also know from talking to traders in the space, like whether people were participating in the DAT or getting long spot or perps, right? Because like I think Sol was trading at around 200, slightly under 200 when they started their raise. It's like a pattern, right? People saw it with Bitcoin, then they started seeing it with ETH. Now it's Sol, and so you just see the fast money rotating quickly out as like these DATs get announced. But I think ultimately, right, it becomes how well can these guys sell to Wall Street, right? And how well can they tell that story? I think Tom Lee has done like a really good job right out the gate. I think diversifying away from like an ETH treasury company, and kind of like doing like other stuff like investing in that other one. Like I think that dilutes the message a little bit, and hopefully he learns from that and can go back and be like, hey, I should be hyper focused on ETH. But I
Yeah.
also think like Kyle's gonna be like a really, really good ambassador to Wall Street. Like he understands, he speaks finance, right? Like he speaks CNBC. And so like that's the type of stuff that you need if you're running one of these DATs. So I think ultimately, I think people will come back to probably the three majors. But I think it's just like people being like, hey, it's risk on. These DATs are coming. We know that there's a pump that we can take advantage of every single time. And until I think one thing in cryptos, I think people catch patterns pretty quickly, and then they really exhaust them, to death pretty fast. And how long this keeps on happening, I don't know. But I think these half cycles, these half lives are going to be faster and faster.
Can I just ask? So you said you invested in the Casa Money DAT. I've also forgotten its name, but they raised around 4 billion, was it? Can you just take me through, like, what is the pitch for that? Like, so are people giving some of their Solana at a discounted level, or is it purely just like an equity play? Like, we're going to do stuff in DeFi with it. Like, how is this pitched to you?
So I just wanted to have access to it. I was playing the trade, right? So to me, I was just kind of like, hey, like I know that this is the theme. And
Right.
like, when I trade, I'm very like momentum driven. So like I'm very good at like adding to winners and letting things ride. And like, doesn't always work. It works best in trending momentum markets. But once you catch that, like it makes up for all the losers. So to me, it was just kind of like, all right, I know the trade in that they're not buying discounted Sol, which I think was the key number one thing that everyone was concerned about going
Right.
into this.
Yeah.
Although, like when I think about it, and you step back, like sure, negative because the whole point of these DATs is you want spot pressure, right? Spot buying pressure. But ultimately, if they're not selling it, they should be buying discounted SOL anyway because they're taking away future sell pressure, right? It just I think in
Yeah.
crypto we're like I want the candy now, and that's why people always want like the spot bags. But to me, it's like I just saw it as a play of like, hey, look, you got Kyle running this. He is a really smart guy that knows, like I said, he knows how to speak finance guy. He's like he knows how to speak to these finance people and give them the pitch that in a way that they understand, right? And I know this as being like an ex TradFi guy, and understanding like
Had a
the
bit of a glow up actually. I saw the evolution of Carl Samani picks, and I don't know what's going on, but he's had a real glow up over the last couple of years.
yeah, I mean, I think we all have, right? Like, we're
Yeah,
all
of course. Yeah,
so
no, I agree with what you're saying though. Just to give the audience a bit of context, Carl Samani is like a he leads one of the major VCs in crypto called Multicoin, right?
yep.
And they were one of the very early investors in Solana. They were one of the very early investors in Sui, and has had this pretty. I mean, when Solana was trading at like 4, everyone was dunking on him, but he kind of held it throughout and has had some incredible returns. And he now seemingly is leading a DAT. I just checked the name of it. It's called Forward Industries. I mean, you should know that because you invested in it. But
Yeah, the ticker Ford, right? I know it as
yeah.
the ticker. Um,
But yeah, they raised a few billion this week to buy Solana, which is a much bigger percentage, I think. Impact like that. It's not that big for Bitcoin, but for Solana, that's quite a big deal. It does feel like yeah, he could be the person. Everyone was looking for this one that was going to emerge, who would be the Michael Saylor or for Solana, and it does feel like it could be Kyle. So get him on your radar. You'll definitely see him on CNBC, and I think there may be like a public debate coming. I've been hearing like between him and Tom Lee on ETH versus Solana.
yeah, I think I like tweeted about that like a couple weeks ago. I was like, I like the top's not in until I see that debate with Andrew Ross Sorkin moderating it, right? Like on CNBC, like that's the top.
Well, it could be next week, dude. So don't
Maybe.
say that.
Hopefully
Uh,
not that soon.
yeah, and have any of the other DATs interested you? Because Avalanche, AVAX, they announced a DAT, which is I think their one is a bit more like buying discounted SOL from the foundation. It's a bit more like removing sell pressure, let's say, like you said.
Yeah,
But
I think like I heard about the AVAX that I heard I didn't look that much into it, but that I heard that they were buying um tokens from the foundation. So it didn't really interest me that much because like that kind of defeats the purpose of how these things run. And even like I know guys that have been trading AVAX on it. I'm like, I don't think this is gonna have the same pump you think it is because they're not taking supply off the market. They're taking future supply from the foundation nonetheless, which
right,
it just
uh,
like it didn't make sense to me personally.
it's quite a big difference. I think AVAX still had a very good week, right? It was one of the best performers out of the L1s, but I would agree that it's very different to Solana, very different to Solana, which I think people had worried that was going to be the case, but actually ended up doing open market transactions.
Mhm.
So yeah, I have to say I do feel a little bit like volatility's here to stay. I've stuck with Bitcoin. Hyperliquid's obviously had another good week as well. That hit an all-time high, which was pretty just relentless. The other one that we've really spoken about the
I
last
have a,
few weeks.
I have a
Sure, yeah.
question for you. Sorry, what's your target on hype? Because I hear like crazy numbers, and I'm always interested to hear where people think it goes.
I honestly, I'm not a hype to 500 sort of person, at least over the next year, like, or 2 years, let's say. I think it's one you kind of want to own for a multi-cycle, which I think it could be a very long-term play. I think they're building kind of like a decentralized Binance, let's say, with some of the stuff they're going to do, and they're building best-in-class assets here. So I am a very much a long-term hyperliquid bull, but not a short-term. This is going to go to like 100. I mean, that's kind of my view on it. Interestingly, the major that I am a little bit, well, probably the most bullish on right now is BNB, which also hit an all-time high this week. I don't know if you've been following that at all, but I started looking at this kind of on the back of, and this is maybe some alpha for the audience. I kind of open up Polymarket each morning, and I just scan what's on there. You sometimes pick up quite a lot of alpha about like what's actually really going on in the world. And one of the first things that came up, I remember seeing, was who was going to get a Trump pardon in 2025, and suddenly there was huge volume going through for CZ, and I was like, oh, okay, this feels like this could be the trade here, that he's going to get a pardon. Binance opens a US office, and maybe we start to see not crime, but a lot of stuff start to launch on Binance. He's been running like a kind of a VC arm on the side, and we saw that this week. We've seen a number of DeFi protocols on Binance do crazy moves, and Binance hit an all-time high of $1,000 this week. Have you looked at Binance at all? It feels like it's a story which is growing right now. Aster was the project which is the hyperliquid of BNB, which hit like $6 billion this week, maybe $5 billion.
First off, kudos on the alpha on looking through Polymarket and prediction markets.
Okay, open it up. Honestly,
I'm gonna start doing that. I like that a lot, because like also it's like it's almost, to your point, is like, how do you best express the trade in size, right? Because you could have purchased, CZ gets the pardon and you get like, whatever the return is, but I'm sure the market was much less liquid than you would have wanted to if you're that convicted in the trade. And like the trade is just like go long BNB, right? Like, and like you could do it for infinite size, pretty much. So I think that's really awesome. I'm going to start looking into that. Aster showed up on my timeline. I saw it late, and like when I see everyone on my timeline talking about it and chilling, I'm like, I missed this. I'm like, I don't even know what this is until it showed up. But like, to your point, it's CZ is kind of back, right? I think he changed his bio on Twitter to I think from X Binance to Binance or something like that, and he's kind of like, we're back and open for business. And the guy's the GOAT, right? Like he built a massive business offshore. He managed to do really well and stay arm's length away, and now he's back. So it's kind of like, will you bet on Elon? Like no matter what he does, yeah, right. Like no matter, even if you don't like the guy, like
that's kind of what it is like for me. And I one of the trades that I just mid-curve this year was the Tron trade, which no one has really been in, but Tron has been one of the best performing L1s, just on the idea that Justin Sun basically controls a lot of the supply and has basically got the pardon from Trump, or got in with the Trump family with World Liberty Financial, and also was, seemingly getting huge fees from stables on Tron. People don't know, but CZ may be amongst the top most wealthy people in the whole world. I think Forbes has him quite far down, but he definitely owns a massive chunk of BNB. And no one really knows how much of Binance he owns, but it's a very, very high amount too. So I don't know where you value Binance, but I think it would be worth multiples of what Coinbase is worth. And he could be in the, in the 300 to 500 billion range, in my opinion. But and maybe that's wild, but I do think he's close to there. But I think he owns a lot of BNB too, and I think he's going to control this chart on the way up. I think you're going to see a bunch of, because he, in this interim period, he set up a VC firm, of which Aster was one of the things he invested in, and there's a ton of other things he invested in. And I think we're about to see a bunch of things that he invested in get Binance listings, and suddenly you start to see like a bit of focus return to Binance. And although I use it occasionally, Binance Chain, I've used it in the past for some meme stuff and some DeFi stuff. I think that if one thing I think Binance did badly was the meme stuff. I do think that if BNB gets hold of DeFi, I think they can actually do quite well with it. I really do. I think it would be kind of mid-curve to think that the owner of the biggest centralized exchange can't think of good DeFi protocols that they can help basically co-invest and king make. So that's my favorite major right now. The rest of them, I feel like it could be volatile, but that one, just because I think that there's going to be there's a lot of control around Binance continuing to go higher, even though it's had like a great run.
I think to your point too, right? And I think something to always to keep in mind is he doesn't need the money, right? Like he doesn't like I'm sure he has a ton of other stuff he would sell before like nuking the chart on BNB, you know? So that always helps as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. For him, he may just want to be known as the wealthiest man in the world, right? If they manage to do, because there's been some talk about, I think they sold a stake to one of the countries in the Gulf region, like maybe it was the UAE or Qatar. They sold a very small stake. And if something comes out about Binance being valued in the hundreds of billions and he owns, I think, easily above 50%, probably above 70% of this thing, then it suddenly changes his kind of story to being like an Elon figure. You know, suddenly it's like, oh wow, like this guy's actually in the top 5 most wealthy people in the whole world. Suddenly,
right? Yeah, and that changes the whole narrative around anything he does and touches on a go forward basis. So it's like it's kind of almost like Elon, but also I think we've been seeing it with Peter Thiel over the last couple of years, where it's like, oh, Peter Thiel invested, like instant multiple up because of the story that's been built around him and his foresight, his investments. So if he's going for that, then which it looks like he is, then BNB is probably like a great way to get liquid exposure to that.
Yeah. The other one that we spoke about a lot on these revenue protocols, and I think we called it pretty well, was Pump. That kind of went mainstream in a week. Like we were talking about it on this show last week, and OSF, actually it was the show just with OSF, which is just for Real Vision members. But we were speaking about it even 2 weeks ago when Spencer came on and Pump was trading it around, I think it was around 5. And then it's just gapped up. It hit an all-time high of, I think, 8.8 billion, and is now settled around 7. But they've already bought back $100 million of their token. They kind of went mainstream with a number of influencers launching coins this week, albeit every single one of them seemingly went to zero. But what do you think about, let's say, that comparison, Pump versus a Hype? Do you think they've got the moat to continue to go? Because if they do, then this thing looks crazy still on a buyback multiple.
So I'm so bullish on Pump even here. I messed up. I was trading it on perps and I got over levered, stopped out like at the bottom right before it ran. I'm just like, what am I doing here? Kind of like to the beginning of the combo where it's like, just sit in spot, right? Like it's like I was like, this thing's going higher. There's a lot of buybacks. They still do a ton of volume, even with let's say mind share down in crypto over the last year or so. So I'm still bullish on it, even though I don't have a position. I think they just need to figure out how to give these coins like that get made on it like long tail value, because these things right now are just like, hey, like we're gonna launch a token, it goes up really quick, then it's worthless within a week. And I just don't think that that's like a sustainable loop that you can keep people in that will make them want to keep coming back to play the game. Once that gets figured out, and I keep seeing it, and I know a lot of people talk about creator capital markets and that meta, and I'm just like, it just doesn't make sense to me still in its current form. If there's a team that can figure it out, I think it's definitely them. I'm still bullish on it. They're the right. It's like you want to own the casino, right? These are all these. Each ones are like the little games. I think as a token holder, rather than try to bet on, oh, let me catch this before it goes viral, because it doesn't have the staying power. Like you just want to own Pump because Pump can still go up a ton. And they have a huge war chest now. You know what I mean? So it's like all they need to do is figure out, I think, that long-term value of a creator coin, and how that can continue to accrue value even for somebody owning it. And then I think they're onto something special. I just don't know what that looks like. I
I
know.
think so. My take, so just in chat, was that they maybe they need to get involved in helping people see a vision of how they can do it. But my honest view is they mucked up the incentives, and I'll talk about this a little bit. Like, they made it so that the percentage of fees decreased as the token went higher. Right? That was one of the first things they said. So there was this weird incentive for people to, in some ways, keep volume high but their token price lower. What they need to do is just reverse that. If they made it so that the most fees were made by the highest tokens, right, then the incentives are there to make sure that these creators keep these tokens high. And that's something I was like, well, I think it would probably increase like bundling of certain coins. But if I was to talk about how we could keep a bunch of tokens high, and if people were able to get in early, they would make money. They just changed the fee structure, and I think they did it the wrong way around. They should have just made it so that the higher the token is, the more fees you make. Right. And then I think you'd have more winners.
I think then my issue with that is, I think then at some point you get into like the church. Like, this is what happened with NFTs a couple of years ago. At some point, people are like, oh, well, you want bad news to come out because you're getting paid like every transaction. So like you get paid on volatility, right? And so at some point, it's like, I feel like in crypto, everything's like in a pendulum. So like right now it's like, oh yeah, like fees, and then like no fees, and then fees, and you're kind of back on that pendulum on both ways. But I agree with you. Maybe it's as simple as that, right? But then I think on the flip side, right, is what people were saying is that, if you launch the token, you didn't earn enough in fees, so you couldn't really like scale your production up to kind of make it sustainable so that you can focus on it. So I feel like there's always two sides to every coin, especially in crypto, and especially when it comes to community alignment with the founder / creator.
Yeah.
I've always been, I like, creator coins haven't made sense to me, just because I just think that you have to be able to, and I know this because I've thought a lot about it for like my own sense. I'm sure you've thought about it too, is like, you have this podcast that you do, you have Yeet, you have your trading, you have a lot of different businesses that you operate. Like, if you just had like Mando coin, that doesn't entitle you to like value accrual from everything you do for the rest of your life, right? Like, it's just that's not the way the world works. That's not the way like businesses are structured and whatnot. But I think if you get some clear separation of like, this token is like related to this specifically, maybe that's where you start seeing it start to catch legs, but not like, oh, this is going to be like for everything that I do, because like that's just not the way the real world works.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I agree that we're not necessarily going to have tons of coins attached to people, which are going to be worth hundreds of millions. It just doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. Maybe we will have more coins, and we're just used to coins immediately going to like tens, 100 million. Actually, like, they really probably should just only be like 100,000 or maybe tens of thousands for some of these creators, because there isn't going to be that much crazy value. But it's just interesting to see it as a platform blow up in the last week, and it's definitely on people's radars. I think now it's kind of become acceptable for a lot of people to create a coin suddenly. And even that acceptability for the mainstream, for streamers, I think will lead to experimentation. And I think they might change some of the incentives, and then I think they'll get it right. I think they are similarly, they make too much money. They just want to make this a success now. Like, they didn't have to go and do this, but now I feel like Alon, who's like the main co-founder, has definitely got a very vocal monkey on his back to try and turn this around.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if there's a team to do it, it's definitely them, and they have the war chest now. I think they're doing really well. And I mean, they're probably like the most successful buyback protocol out there outside of Hype at the moment. So
yeah, there was some. I mean, we spoke a little about some other ones. Athena was one on the stablecoin side. There's obviously going to be some more in in the DeFi side, we saw this week that I think Kyle Samani was putting some of the Solana DAT TVL potentially into Solana DeFi. And we saw huge moves in coins like Drift and in Camino, I think, which is like the main lending protocol on Solana. So both of those are up like 50% this week. But it does, I don't know if you agree with this, but it really does feel like DeFi is where the majority of the wins are kind of happening. All these sort of, you own the casino, you own the revenue play. This is DeFi's cycle again. Like if DeFi 2021 was right, we're going to do all this DeFi stuff and actually it's going to be vacuous and there's governance tokens and who knows where the yield comes from. Like it really does feel like DeFi has found product market fit for me in the last 6 months. I don't know if you would agree with that too.
No, I totally agree. I think to me, when maybe like I think it was like last summer, one of like ETH's like major down moves. I think it was like on a Sunday night, on an illiquid Sunday night, some macro news comes out and ETH had this massive down move. And I was just like, this to me was like DeFi's moment to shine of like, oh, this is like Ethereum is the institutional chain. Cause at that moment, I remember that was the first time where people weren't like, oh my God, like there's a lender that's about to blow up on Aave and that's going to cause a cascade and ETH is going down to zero. Like everything functioned. I think there was like some insane number of liquidations on like an illiquid Sunday night. And nobody was like, is this protocol solvent? It was just like, oh yeah, like somebody's about to blow up. It sucks for them, but like we're still going to be here. And that to me was just like that battle test that like we need. That to your point is like, I think people with institutional capital that are worried about the return of capital, not necessarily like, what's the return on it, are like, okay, like I can feel comfortable deploying something here. We just have to understand the risks a little bit better. But once we do, then we can deploy size, right? And now you have protocols out there that have been live for, 5, 6, 7 years, if not longer, that have been battle tested, that they're like, okay, like let's deploy capital onto this chain because we know we have, one, that transparency, and two, that like it'll survive whatever test that gets put to it. So it makes me like super bullish on like, like the old DeFi names from last cycle.
Yeah, that's right. I think they've been battle tested now, and the business model, and now suddenly they can turn on the fee, switches. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But the ones that are, you can tell like the tokens are starting to work, and people are experimenting with models around that a lot more. I've just seen a lot of interesting things come out of that. It feels like from the DeFi side, far more than even on like the meme side. Like I guess this creator capital market stuff makes sense, but they haven't quite got that flywheel right yet. And DeFi now feels like they're connecting the gap. Like the flywheel is now in place, and DeFi is working. Whereas it feels like for a lot of other things, it's like we're still trying to work out how to make that kind of flywheel work again.
Well, I think to your point, I think on like the internet capital market side is like you're trying to help a business go from 0 to 1, and that's like it's hard, right? It's to find out first if their product market fit, and like my thesis with tokens in general is like once you have that product market fit and you've gone from 0 to 1, going from 1 to 10 or higher, whatever, is just much easier because you're like, okay, well, we know this works. Where can we sprinkle incentives to kind of increase that flywheel, right? And get it to really go, right? And that's just like classic, business and figuring out, okay, this is where we're going to get our value from as a business or a protocol. So this is where we should get people to want to interact. And you sprinkle some token incentives on there, and then boom, you watch the flywheel go. And I think they're very different value props. And so like, I think DeFi tokens from last cycle, they obviously traded way ahead of where the market was at that time. And then it took some time to digest. And that's why we had a lot of consolidation for a while. And it seems like now it's like, oh, okay, like now, the next leg of adoption is coming, right? TVLs are going to start rising, and they're going to start rising very quickly. It's like, that meme, suddenly, then all at once.
Yeah. The other thing I think we saw this week as well, and on the back of that, like the idea that these sort of businesses work and flywheels work and tokens work, is I think we're now going to enter a period of a lot of pretty good tokens also come out. And this week we got, I think today or yesterday, it sounds like MetaMask token could be out in the next month or two. And then the big one this week was Base. Base revealed that they are going to be exploring a network token. It felt very, I would say, early in those sort of discussions, and it's maybe go worth watching the video presentation. It's like Steve Jobs meets crypto vibes. But they, I mean, for a long time, Coinbase said we'd never have a token, and there were some takes off the back of that. Is this good for ETH? Is this bad for ETH? A lot of the activity, a lot of the TVL for Ethereum right now has really been driven by Base, and they've definitely benefited from being part of that ecosystem. And ETH has benefited somewhat by having them too. Although there's been a lot of questions about like where the value breaks between L1 and L2. Do you think this is something that people should be going to farm, or like, are you interested in this? Do you think this would? Do you think this is one of the biggest tokens to ever launch?
I don't like farming personally. I feel like my issue with farming is I don't know what the ROI is, right? And so like, why am I going to commit, let's say, capital or more importantly, time to do something? And also I think it depends on how big your stack is, right? Like if you have a smaller stack, then for sure it makes sense to farm. But I just think that I think we're probably past the days where you're going to farm something for a couple months and, find generation wealth off of it. Like, I think you'll get something for sure. But like, would that be closer to $100 or closer to $10,000 or closer to 100,000? Right. I would say 100,000 definitely off the table. And I would even, I don't know, unless you're a power user of everything, probably 10,000 is probably off the table. I just think I think that's kind of gone, because I think even as a business, you kind of want to incentivize rewards on a go forward basis, not necessarily for like retroactive, right? And so it's like maybe that pool will be there still, but it'll be a much smaller pool, because you also don't need to. I think one of the things from last cycle was you had to play these decentralization, this game of decentralization. So you had to airdrop a lot of tokens very quickly. And now that you don't need to go into this decentralization theater, you don't need to airdrop, a significant portion of the tokens right out of the gate. So I think that's why we've seen airdrops become smaller and smaller. So me personally, like, it's great. I think like them launching a token, I think makes sense. I think people have been talking about it for a while. I just am not sure, if that token pool is 5% or 2%, then like, it's just like diluted amongst everybody that's involved in it, which is what we've seen, right? Which is why, again, like, I don't like doing these types of things where people are like,
there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Like, it's like, how much are they going to drop? What do we think the FTV is going to be? Is it going to be multiple airdrops, or is it going to be one? And yeah, like, how many other people are being involved in it? Like, there's so many different variables.
Yeah.
Let's maybe, do you think that, I mean, the biggest L2 token, I think IFTV is kind of Arbitrum, or maybe Mantle, which is like between 5 to 10 billion. What where do you think? And we have like Solana, which is at like 100, 130 now. Hyperliquid's at 50, 55. Where do you think a base coin comes? I think that FTV comes. That their TVL is like 5 billion. I don't know if that's a great way to measure a chain, but it's definitely. And we just spoke about Binance. Binance's coin is worth, I think, 100 roughly.
I think it really comes down to like, what's the float on day one, right? Like, I think there's so much that goes into, where these things trade at. Gun to my head, I'd probably say like in the 10-ish range, because I think like I don't know, but I'm also like not, I don't really like do much trading in this aspect of, let's say, speculation of where these things launch, because I do think that there's a ton of variables that, like, if it's a really low float, then this thing's going to the moon, right? And then it'll come back over time, right?
If World Liberty Financial can launch at 22 billion and they've got a lot of, let's say, supply control, I think this thing will come at like 50. Or like, I think it will come high. I really do. Maybe like 30 to 50.
Okay.
I think 10, if it was any old L2, I would have said, yeah, like, okay, 5 to 10, but I feel as though this is Coinbase's coin, right? The people will comp this to Binance, they'll comp this to Hyperliquid, they'll comp this to Solana, and I don't think they're going to comp it maybe to Arbitrum and Optimism. I think they'll probably comp it to the bigger names. And recent token launches, like some of the FTVs are wild.
Yeah, but like again, like I think like on a lot of them, I just think you have to take them with a grain of salt because there's so much on it, it's so much that has to do with how much is controlled of supply. And listen, I'm sure you've done a lot of research and work on this stuff because I've looked into it too of like what constitutes a successful token, right? And a lot of it has to do with making sure you know where the supply is and making
Yeah.
sure that people aren't like rushing for the exits on day one.
So hopefully they do that. Hopefully
Yeah, I mean, listen,
they've to the table.
yeah, they've got a lot of smart guys on the team. I'm sure they've been thinking about it a lot, and obviously their stance has changed significantly from where it was even 12 months ago, because of the stuff that we've seen coming out of Washington.
Yeah, I just get the feeling that I mean, I don't know. I think this feels like a token that will come next year rather than this year. But we also heard that Polymarket might be doing a token this year. So we've three pretty big ones there, like MetaMask, Polymarket, and Base. Like I said, I think everyone now that everyone feels okay with the buyback sort of mechanics and just the idea of even releasing a coin, we're starting to see a lot more like really big protocols, I think, coming in now, which have been waiting for a long time. So probably worth, like I said, there's no doubt in my mind that isn't just being superior to all of this. Like the best ROIs if you have a small bag because they give out the biggest airdrop to versus like volume rather than necessarily like TVL. So if you just have a few $1,000 in crypto, like look at these sort of airdrops because there will be really, really good return on capital opportunities there, if it's just something you want to do peripherally. So I think it's worth looking at. I think that was broadly it in terms of, but maybe we'll just touch upon NFTs a little bit because I think when we last spoke as well, we were speaking about, are we going to get an NFT DAT? Is this now going to be the moment for NFTs? Punks have still kind of held above 200K. Xcopy grifters have been strong this week. Pengu and Pudgy Penguins have been strong. And then we saw this perpetual motion machine, like the Punk Strategy coin, which was launched, which was buying punks as well. Do you still think NFTs people should be spending a lot more time on?
So have you spent a lot of time on Punk Strategy?
I haven't, but we should maybe speak about it when you talk about it.
Yeah, so basically, it was launched. I think it was last week. I remember seeing it. Very interesting mechanic, right? Like you buy the token. It has a 10% tax on every trade, and so then from that 10%, I think 8% goes to a pool that will once it gets to the certain amount, then it buys a floor punk. 1% I think goes to the creator, and 1% I think goes to like the people that bought the NFT originally, something like that. I don't remember the exact mechanics. And so I faded it initially because like I just like glanced at it, and I think there was like some bug in the contract, I think on day one, and then it really started picking up steam, and now I think they have 8 punks. So basically, it's pretty much like a market in my opinion. It's like kind of like a market making mechanism where okay, you buy the punk floor punk, it immediately gets listed, currently 20% higher, but you can do they can set it anywhere from like 10% to 10x higher, and it accrues value, and it buys the punk, and then it stores it in the vault, and then it will sell it. When it sells the punk, it will then market by the Punk Strategy token, burning those tokens forever. So it's the deflationary asset. I think it's interesting. It's pretty much my entire NFT feed has been people talking about it. I think, and then they expanded. I think it was supposed to expand to yesterday. It might have just gone live, I think, while we're on this call, of them expanding this strategy to market make for other NFT projects. And then I think something like 10%, or I forget the exact percentages, but a percentage of the market making for other NFT strategies will then go and buy the Punkster token, the Punk strategy token. So ultimately, it's like, even though they're doing this service for other strategies, ultimately, like, value will accrue to CryptoPunks, which to me kind of like leads into what my thesis has always been, is like, for me, punks are like the reserve asset of NFTs. Like that, they're like the number one asset to own. So I like it. I love the experimentation. I think that it's a really cool concept. It's kind of like, hey, we're not going to wait for a DAT to form around this. We're just going to kind of make our own version of it. I personally think that maybe like the punk should be sold at a higher multiple rather than 20%, because like now we have a sell wall 20% higher that, like, we'll just be there. And I'm sure once the wall gets there, I'm sure people will start being like, oh, well, we should list these like, you know, laddered or 10x higher or like whatever, because people want number to go up. But I think it's interesting. It's a cool experiment. I think
It's
it's
an interesting just way of thinking about it in general, right? Like normally for all assets, you pay a fee, and the fee will kind of just go to the ETF produced creator, or maybe some sort of trading venue. If you do this, you could do this not just for NFTs, right?
yeah, you can do it for anything.
This is a way to basically form a mutual fund where the trading volume will always, well, a large bit of the trading fees will always go back to buying the underlying asset. So when I saw this, I was like, wow, they've basically formed a better version of an ETF for people here, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
um,
I think the interesting thing too, and I think Derek Edwards had like a really good post about it, of like, it's almost like you're betting on the future trading volume on CryptoPunks, right? Because like that's kind of what this asset is, right? Because the value of it is derived from the more people that trade this asset, it will buy more punks, and then it'll market make them. So it's like, I think that was like an interesting way of looking at it. It's a very different form of exposure than just buying a crypto punk, right? Or an NFT. And you're almost betting on the trading volume of that NFT, which I think is like an interesting way. But to your point, is like a different, it's like a self-run ETF slash mutual fund. And I think probably the next iteration of this is being able to do this with like multiple coins, or maybe like a basket of whatever. Let's say it was like a DeFi protocol, right?
yeah, like I was thinking about even this, something like this theoretically, something like this for REKT would be better for a lot of people than even ETF around something like REKT, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I think that the novelty really is that like NFTs haven't really had this liquid token, and this allows them to have a liquid token slightly better. But it
But
does
they,
feel
I
as
guess like people have been going back and forth on it. Whereas like there's, if you don't have enough money to own a punk, there's cheaper ways to own a punk without having to pay a 10% tax to get in and out, right? Because there are like still fractional ownership of punks. That I think the thing is they probably still trade at a discount to NAV, which has always been the issue, right? A lot of times these things come right out of the gate. They trade at a premium to NAV, so it's great, but over time that premium compresses and ultimately becomes a discount, because you have one, the illiquidity discount, and then also like the non-ownership discount, right? Unless you can figure out how to redeem.
yeah, I think those things are super fair. It's interesting to see though. Like, so you think this is going to be an ongoing thing? I saw that they expanded it to Moonbirds, Meebits, I think Pudgy Penguins,
Yeah.
but
Or
this
data.
is, you wouldn't fade this. Do you think this is going to be the thing now? I kind of can see it. I can see
I
it.
can I can definitely see it. I don't own any. I think the earliest I saw was at 2 million, and for some reason I didn't buy it. I think last night, I don't know where it's trading right now, but last night I think it hit 27. Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting, and props to, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Rhinotic.
Yeah.
Props to him for building the protocol and experimenting. And as I think I was one of the NFT holders that funded this, so I think we've gotten like 50% of our original capital spent, because some of those fees have been diverted to us. So it's cool. Like, I think it's just like, it's very decentralized and it's very in the ethos of crypto, which I find really interesting. And it's a really cool experiment that's like only made possible on crypto, which is cool in my
Yeah,
opinion.
exactly. And it's good that it's like an OG dev, because I feel like people trust it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe we will go to the questions now. put in your questions if you need to. I'm just going to try and find this in the question document. It's so long. Yeah, if you want to give any questions towards the end of the show, that would be great. I actually can't even see. So there's a question about REKT, but have I missed this, producer? Here we go. Oh, it hasn't been put in yet. 1 second. So this week, maybe we'll just talk about the next couple of weeks in Korea and potential price predictions for REKT. That's a little bit difficult for me to do because I am one of the founders of REKT, but my prediction is they've got a collaboration with MoonPay. I think going live right now. That will be 1 million cans sold, I believe. It's if it sells out, which would rival Red Bull's first year for sales. I don't know if have you tried the new one, gmoney? Did they send you?
No, I haven't tried the new one. But I saw OSF, or was it you or OSF saying that it was the best flavor yet?
It's the best one. Oh, for sure. Like I actually mean that this time.
Is it like grape? Is it because it's purple? Is it like a grape flavor?
I think it's like blueberry even. You never really know because they don't really say, but this one is the best. And I've been speaking to those. When I speak to OV one-on-one, he's so excited about all the new stuff they've got coming up. So a bunch of different stuff on the consumer side, which I know you know very very well. Like I feel like they've got the right flywheel in place. REKT, it's one of the most volatile coins in crypto, but it's still hanging out around 350 million. So I think that's a massive win, if I'm honest already. Like for that attached to a drinks business to do that, but who knows? If we continue to execute like this, I think it could be a one to continue to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, I still have my bag. I wish I had more. I think when it was sitting at 10 million, I was like debating whether I should buy more, and sadly I did not. But I'm still sitting on my original.
Everyone has that. Like I was looking at it at $10 million and then now it's at 300 million. I just can't take myself to buy it. It was one of those charts which literally just went vertical and then now it's just like frustrating for people to even look at. Is there anything else you've looked at apart from Punk Strategy over the last week or two on like that altcoin bag? I know you've had some AI coins. We spoke about Tau, I think last time you came on here as well, but is there anything else you've been like, okay, I might allocate part of my portfolio to?
At the moment, I'd say like anything that I've been doing has just been a trade. I think like the trade that I messed up really in the last like 30, 45 days was that pump trade where I should have just been long spot. So I'm annoyed at myself. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I should just be trading long spot. I shouldn't be trading on leverage because it's like I'm not in it to like day trade anymore and like, try to catch these like quick moves because I'm just not in front of the screen enough as much as I used to be. I'm looking at like a couple of things that are like, let's say like
not good. I mean, it's down 20% since that recent high, but I agree with you. Like you maybe need, it became a bit consensus very, very quickly. So maybe it'll bleed a little bit more.
I mean, I probably like the thing is like, I think even buying a position like around here, as long as you're in spot and not too levered, I just, to me, it's like, like sometimes when you get in those trades and like you mess it up and you're like, I'm not going to get back in unless it's like a screaming buy. And I feel like it's not quite there yet. And so I'm watching, like it's definitely on my list. And then I have like a couple like sub 200 million market cap coins that I'm looking at that I just am trying to do some work on to see if like that flywheel's there, if I like the product, if I want to use it. And then like build a position because like they're not liquid enough, especially like in this type of market. Because like to your point of what you were saying earlier, right? Like these like especially when you're wrong, there's no liquidity to get out. So you have to really like risk these and size these accordingly of assuming that you're going to be risking significantly more than you think if you think you have a stop at a certain price.
Yeah, I think the stuff on my radar right now is like I said, BNB and just the whole BNB ecosystem. I'm really paying attention to because I just feel like it's got a kind of a unique story now into year end. Pump, I have owned it throughout this whole up, down, sideways, and I'm thinking about growing it. If I'm honest, I think maybe not like today. I think it can probably bleed a little bit more. Probably go back down to like 6-ish. But I do think that's an obvious one. And then, yeah, it's all this revenue method stuff on DeFi. I think it's become a lot more like what it was in like 2021, I feel like, but it actually makes sense. Like you can look at the revenues of different protocols, you can look at their TVL, and the analysis, you can analyze these a little bit more with traditional finance, feels like. So anyone I think can come and do that. It's not like meme coin season where it was like where you need to be in this Discord group to get the nod for what's going to make sense. This is now the time to maybe do some analysis in crypto because there's definitely some gems out there.
I think that's what, to me, it's like ultimately that's kind of what the revenue meta is, right? It's like a return to fundamentals of, hey, the reason why this asset has value is because there's some cash flow and we discount that back to the value today. And that determines, where I think fair market value is, or fair value of the asset is, right? And so I'm excited that that's happening more and more, and that we're starting to see that from more and more protocols, right? Where they're like, hey, we're going to buy and burn X percentage, right? Whatever that, from some number of X percentage up to 100%, right? And now I think Hype and Pump are unique in that they've already made so much cash and they have so much cash in the bank and they're printing money that they can do that 100%, daily buyback. But like I think any startup, right, you need to kind of put some of that towards the actual daily operations. And then once you hit that and like you're growing that bank roll, like I think Courtyard's a great example. I was on with their CEO last week, and I seed invest.
We had a big show around trading cards last week.
Yeah,
probably like, 2 minutes, but
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We spoke about it for too long, I think. But yeah.
but I was talking to Nicholas, and so like I'm talking to him about how the business is going. He's like, dude, like they're printing money. They did a raise. He's like, we haven't even come close to touching that because we're making so much money doing this and we're growing so fast. And it's like, yeah, I'm like, man, that would be like the perfect flywheel for a token, but he does it. They don't need it, right? It's the same thing with Pump, where Pump didn't need a token for so long that when they did launch a token, like they were able to kind of do it well,
Yeah. That's a very good point. And this is something, I mean, I obviously I'm involved in Yeet, and Yeet makes money, but you have to, even as you have a startup, right? Do you then, how much do you want to allocate versus being able to grow the business versus creating a good token? Pump basically made $3 billion, then did a raise, right. and then did a token, which means that they can kind of chill. Hyperliquid makes $5 million a day.
Right.
And was making a large amount even before the token. It is a little bit difficult. Like we've kind of been spoiled to a certain extent over some of these tokens, because you're like, I've seen other people experiment with the idea of we have to hit these thresholds. Like we have to get a tier 1 Binance listing or tier 1 listing. We need to hit this much revenue per year, and then we'll turn on the buyback. I kind of feel like that's maybe the best way to go. Like I'd actually prefer to see that from certain businesses rather than just immediately go after we're going to 100% flywheel, because sometimes that's just not sustainable on a business level.
Yeah, it's not sustainable from a business level, but then also, right, is like if you created a business that's growing and printing so much money so quickly, like I could make an argument that the money is better spent in your hands as the management team to continue growing that business rather than like returning capital, right? Like returning capital makes sense if you have nothing else to do with that money, right? If you don't think you can get a higher ROI utilizing that money within the business, but then to start giving a dividend, it's like if you want to invest in, I've made this this analogy in the past. It's like if you want to invest in a dividend paying stock, like buy Apple, don't like buy a crypto startup, right? Like crypto startup, you're here for like that 0 to 100, that 100x, and it doesn't necessarily come from like you want them to be reinvesting back in the business. But to your point, right, it's like these Hype and Pump have created so much money, so much revenue that they like it works. It's just that in and of itself, I think, is a moat, right? Like it makes it really hard for a new startup to come up and compete with them because they don't have that war chest that both of those businesses have.
Yeah, that I completely agree. It feels as though both of those businesses, because they got so far ahead and they got the model right now, it's difficult. But I think we are going to see more of a diligent approach, like immediately going to that 100%. And people who do it too early may actually destroy themselves in the process. Either way. Look, G-Money, you said we always have a good chat before we come on. I thought this was really good. We've got approached a ton of different things. Obviously, I'll see you in Asia. Obviously, for the audience, go follow him. He's at G-Money NFT. I'm at Mando if you want to go check it out. But is there anything you're specifically involved in at the moment, G-Money, that you want to maybe talk about?
No, nothing specifically. I'm going to be in Korea and Singapore over the next 2 weeks. So if you're around, hit me up. I'm down to meet up with people, just trying to see like what opportunities are out there and where we think crypto's going over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, you do a lot of like VC style stuff, angel stuff as well. You're involved in a lot of the cool rounds that happen in crypto. So go check them out. And yeah, thanks for coming on. It's always a great show.
Thanks for having me.
I think that's it, audience. We will see you again next Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. British summertime. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we see a bit of a rebound, but if not, we'll be here next week. Bye, guys.